Hello and welcome to It's About Youth with me, Fei Kwan. Today we are joined by three very special guests in the studio. They are youth advocates, Arjun Jaya Vejayan from Pahang, Jessie from Kuala Lumpur, as well as Sharifah, Nuralyaa, Syed, Azhar from Malacca. Thank you so much, the three of you, for joining me today. It's a pleasure to have you on. Now, we are almost wrapping up the first month of 2025. As a first question, just to start off, I want to know, what are you most looking forward to for this year? And at the same time, what are some of your most pressing concerns about your future? Arjun, shall we start with you?
Yep, so this year, I'm most looking forward to the developments of AI and AI chatbots. I think last year, they were quite useful in helping me study and do certain things that I wouldn't have been able to do before. And as the year progresses, or this year, I look forward to seeing how it can be integrated into other things, like how it can maybe be used to translate Bahasa Malaysia or Bahasa Melayu more effectively. Because I feel like last year, one thing that lacked was that for certain subjects, I could have used AI to study more effectively. Whereas for Bahasa Melayu, it was a bit lacking, or it didn't translate essays properly. One thing I'm concerned about this year is the rise of social media addiction. Me, myself, studying SPM, I've had to delete all social media platforms because at one point it was just too addictive. And it happens beyond my control at certain times. I feel like every time I download an app, I just end up scrolling or end up getting hooked on it because of how rewarding it is to my brain. So I think that's one concern that needs to be weighed a lot this year. And I think there needs to be more measures to help students or help children effectively deal with that.
Well, congratulations on your discipline for not accessing social media. I'd like to talk a little bit more about both of the things you mentioned, AI and social media. But let's move on to Jessie first. Yeah.
If I could jump off from Arjun, like he said, social media, I think one of the more pressing concerns I have is about the safety and all the media that we gain from social media, especially all the not so appropriate material that we see. So I definitely have a concern for all the moderation, because yes, we do have proper moderation. We can report people, we can block them, but still, it's so easy to just post anything that we want to post, and it's so easy for people to just steal that content and then post it somewhere else. But one of the things that I am more excited for is definitely for Malaysia's implementation to really take children's voices and our opinions to go towards matters that affect our future and our lives.
And how about you, Alia?
I would have to agree with Jessie, because for me, one of my most excited thing in 2025 is definitely how we're going to use social media to raise awareness and giving voice from the youth. And I've seen that happens before in previous years, but it definitely is still lacking in that sense. So I'm really excited to see how we're going to use social media and other media platforms to really just voice out our opinions, especially from the youth side. And one of my biggest concerns is definitely the rise in cyberbullying and just other bullying cases in general, but especially cyberbullying, because we have seen previous cases before, and even still that, I've come to notice that there is an actual specific legislation surrounding cyberbullying. So that is something that we could definitely improve from the government side and the legislation side, because especially cyberbullying has been rising a lot lately.
And also affecting a lot of youth in particular, right? So we see that with social media, there is that tool to be able to amplify youth voices, such as the three of yours, but then it also comes with a lot of risk, online safety and such. And when we talk about amplifying youth voices, from your experience as youth advocates, what are any particular challenges that you face, in line with these online risks, and also with, the climate crisis, the climate anxiety, and so on and so forth? Alia, would you like to take this?
I think one of the things that I'm combating on when trying to advocate for youth is definitely misinformation. When talking about misinformation, it's really easy for when you're kind of expressing your opinions and certain things, it's easy for people to kind of misinterpret it in a way. And especially nowadays, in current generations especially, everyone feel like they need to kind of get their little opinions out, even though, let's say for example, I gave out certain takes, and then people would just, listen to that for 5 minutes or so, and then they feel like they need to kind of just give their opinions without, maybe analyzing or listening to different sides, which is a problem in our generations, is that people feel like they need to have opinions on every little things, and that is kind of the thing that I'm combating on as a youth advocate. So definitely, yeah, misinformation for me.
Misinformation. How about you, Arjun?
So for me, I agree with Alia heavily. I think the amount of misinformation that's being spread is tremendous. And I also think specifically for social media platforms and the internet, it has been coined the marketplace of ideas. But I think that also has a negative effect, because if you're trying to forward your social goal, or if I'm trying to send a message about cybersecurity or cyberbullying, for example, it oftentimes gets crowded out by other trendy topics. And it, like, social media incentivizes trendiness.
Yeah.
So it doesn't, the information that gets put out doesn't necessarily need to be informative. It just needs to align with a certain trend or needs to sound emotive. And I think that's a problem, because a lot of the topics like climate change is oftentimes science-based or very technically, like, you need a lot of technical knowledge. And if we just focus on getting out emotional content, or if that's what people respond to on social media, or if that's what the algorithm rewards, I think it ends up like hardening or making the pursuit of advocacy harder, especially for youth who may not be as willing to do that very emotive things, or who are more willing to stick to a technical standpoint in voicing their opinions. So I do think that's one challenge in advocacy in 2025.
And on that note, really, I'd like to bring our attention. So Article 12 of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child provides that children have the right to express themselves freely in all matters that affects them, and that their views should be given due weight according to their age and majority. Jessie, what do you think? Are youth voices, I know you've expressed some excitement on being more involved in informing our policies, but what do you think at this current stage? Are youth voices given enough weight by those who have the power to change policies that affect your future?
I think their opinions are definitely given the weight that adults think deserve. But in my opinion, I've definitely seen like a lot of kids where they give their opinions and then adults take it, but they change it in a way where the adults assume that this is better, because adults tend to have this mindset that the youth or kids are unwise or not mature enough to have proper opinions, especially regarding to like laws that affect us. So there is weight given, but it's not enough.
And what steps do you think can be taken to empower youth voices a little bit more in this instance on important issues, and to be able to play bigger roles in such discussions?
I think that the one thing that I've like heard a lot from other youths, especially when I've had talks with them, is that most of them said that they didn't feel comfortable about voicing their opinions because they felt like they would be judged or accused of like some sort of thing because they just had an opinion. So I think the step that we could take is definitely creating a comfortable space for them, so that they can really express their opinions without the fear of being misjudged or just having an opinion in general.
So taking away that intimidation, creating safe spaces for you guys to be able to voice anything freely, free of judgment. Alia, I saw you smiling and nodding as Jessie was speaking. What are your thoughts on this?
For me, I think another way that maybe the youths can like get involved in, just policy making is actually for the adults to actually hear us out, like make us involved in the policy making, even if we're like, maybe for them we are like maybe a bit immature, maybe not fully known on the knowledge yet. It's okay for us to like be educated on that kind of topic, to really just tell us what from their side, what do they think is the right, and maybe then listen to our side also. So really we need to have that like across generations kind of discussion, so that really you can get alliance about the safer environment in the future, online environment safer in the future from both sides, and alliances both of our future, especially knowing that youths are like the driven for the next generations. Like we are the ones who will lead the next generation, so really need to get our voice out also.
Exactly. And when talking a little bit about online, there's also this risk of digital disruption, and with evolving technologies such as AI. Arjun, you spoke about AI a little bit. How do you see things such as artificial intelligence affecting your generation? You've spoken a bit about the good side of it. It's helping you with your studies. But is there any sort of changes you'd like to see with these kind of technologies to ensure that children's rights and voices are better protected?
So I do believe that AI in general is a force for good for students if used properly. So I've seen in the education system especially, even in like rural areas or like rural schools, I know a teacher who uses AI to create images for the trial papers, and that speeds up her job. Like, it makes it way easier. And a bunch of students as well. Like, if we don't know an answer to a very tricky question, before asking our teachers, we'll ask the AI chatbot if we don't want to disturb our teachers or if there's no time. And it just gives us an understanding of that question holistically, and also extra information that we would have never thought about for that question. I do think, however, that with AI, it sort of changes the way students think. No longer do we have to fine-tune the small details. I think it frees up space for us to think about higher level things. So for example, when I write my essays for like college applications, I primarily use AI to improve the language, and that allows me to save time and use more of my time to figure out a better direction for the essay or figure out better ideas to put into the essay. The challenge with all of this, however, is I think there needs to be a formalized introduction of AI in the classroom. I think a lot of teachers and students are already using it like completely. So if there's a approach to it by the government or by any party to just make it solidified and formalize the way teachers and students use it, I think that just improves the relationship between students and AI and leads to a better quality of the education system.
That's an important, interesting point actually that you brought up, incorporating AI into the national syllabus, because that is the trajectory that we are headed towards. Students and teachers are using it already informally with your education. Jessie, what would you like, or what do you think are changes that you'd like to see addressing these kind of new technologies to ensure children's rights are better protected?
I think I already tackled this question like way earlier when I was talking about moderation.
Yep.
I think
maybe you can elaborate a little bit more about that.
I think the main thing is that, like, besides moderation, it's also just like awareness in general about children's rights and how they can be protected without having to need all these admin or moderators to do it themselves. So I think if we could just like be more aware about child rights, especially like on social media, because we're all using social media, so it's a much more quicker way to get everyone aware about children's rights itself, then it'll be easier for us to protect each other from any issues.
And when spreading that awareness on children's rights, where do you think we can even begin? Because as mentioned, you know, there seems to be a generational gap, a lack of understanding between generations, and at some points that lack of understanding that immaturity or age doesn't necessarily equate to immaturity or not being able to inform policies. So where do you think we can begin?
I think we can really begin from the small areas, the ones that you're more comfortable with. So like your friends, your family, even your neighborhood, your community, even at school, even with your teachers, your counselors. Because as long as there's more than one person aware, then the message will begin to spread to everyone.
And Alia, how about you? When we're talking about protecting children's rights, I think, you know, as a former participant as well in ICT security, what do you believe should be the top priority to protect children and youth in digital spaces?
Personally, I think the top priority that should definitely be taken in when talking about protecting children's rights is really making sure that the environmental platforms is safe for the children to use, for the youth to use. So this is where the government can play a role in. So I don't have any vision in stopping the development of AI. That is quite literally impossible, as we are obviously going to the development of AI in first place. But what I think that the government can do is that they can definitely hold on and delay the deployment of AI into the environment. So we've seen this done with other industries, for example, like when creating drugs. So when a certain company is creating some sort of drugs, obviously they would have to test out the side effects and other like safety measures, which is very lengthy process before launching the drugs in the first place. So I see for them to also do the same when it comes to AI. We actually need to test out different aspects from different, various aspects and making sure that it's really safe, not just for the adults to use it, but also making sure that it's safe for the youth to use it, by making sure there's actually laws surrounding it, like specific laws surrounding it, and making sure that it's easy to have strict regulations when it comes to, you know, introducing it to youth and children and all like that.
And with these sort of rapid changes in technology and the other challenges and the risks that you've spoken, what does the future of children's rights look for the three of you? I'm really curious to hear about your opinions on this. Are you optimistic? Are you pessimistic? Shall we start with Alia first? We'll go this way.
The future of children's rights. I think there's obviously both the optimistic side of it and the pessimistic side of it. If I would have to start with the optimistic side of it, I would have to go back to what Arjun have said. It's really wonderful how AI is, you know, helping us with our education, and not just education, like in healthcare and other various industries, and it really just shows that we can work together with technology to, you know, just really create a better environment for the future and the future generations. But if I have to be a little bit more pessimistic about it, it's definitely, again, back to the lack of laws surrounding AI and how it's still, like Arjun said, introduced informally in our daily lives. So in that sense, it's really hard for people to actually be aware of the cons of it, the badness of it, of AI in general. So the future for me, if we have to you know, improve it, is definitely to, you know, make people aware of the badness of AI, and also making sure that it's really safe before we start to actually use it and then get overly dependent on it.
It's almost like playing catch up with AI. Jessie, how about you? What does the future of children's rights look like for you?
I think that the future of children's rights is actually going to be very well, because I've definitely heard a lot of implementation from the government itself, especially regarding CFCI. It's a child-friendly city implementation. So it's basically to get like different cities to be more child-friendly, to really agree to the child rights itself. So I think that with all this implementation, I think the future will be really well.
Okay, that's a very more positive outlook. Arjun?
Yeah, so I think that, like Jessie said, there's been a lot of progress in guaranteeing our basic rights, like the right to survive and right to education. Now, don't get me wrong, there are still issues like the statelessness crisis in Sarawak and Sabah, where children still aren't able to get education. But I think the state our country is in right now is much better than before. So I think the focus on rights will shift from rights to survive to a right to participation, which is, I think, within the UNCFC as well, where a child should be obligated or should have the right to participate in things that adults are doing. So I think more and more adults recognize that our maturity is also increasing. Like, we don't give bad ideas, most of our ideas are quite good. And there's a lot of untapped potential, especially like, I'm a debater, so within my circles, we debate on topics, and the quality of ideas I hear from a lot of children, some who are still under the age of 15, are like really good and can be compared to much of the ideas I hear by adults, because we read up a lot. And we also follow a more modern stream of information. So I think with the right to participation, more and more children will have a say in what certain judicial proceedings that will affect them, or certain policies in the education system or healthcare system that maybe would relate to them, like insurance policies and other things like that.
So we have made progress, but there's still room for improvement, and we've got a long way to go with empowering children's rights. I think we've talked quite a little bit on things that others can do, the government then can do to involve youth voices. But as youth advocates, how can youth themselves contribute to shaping a world that prioritizes inclusivity, safety and fairness for all? Arjun?
Yeah, so one issue I have with the current way a lot of young people spread their advocacy is they often resort to a more emotive and full-on approach, which is that every time they feel a problem, they would simply resort to social media, let out their feelings and feel like the issue is solved. I think it's called slacktivism or some form of that. I feel like a better approach is something that we used to do before in events like Undi 18 and even anti-corruption protests. We used to collectivize youth organizations a lot, or even create youth organizations with the purpose of solving a problem. So there are some youth organizations now that are trying to solve problems faced by youth, like My Diplomacy or MYADP. I think more of these organizations, or a greater effort on collaboration with these organizations to solve problems, rather than just voicing out the problem on social media, would lead to better forms of change and more direct forms of change. Because I feel like every time we post a TikTok or an Instagram post saying how we are so frustrated with a specific thing, it won't lead to change unless an adult hears it or someone important hears it. And I feel like youth organizations can be the only bridge to that.
And taking those opinions offline as well and making it into reality. Jessie, how about you?
If I could actually jump off from Arjun, like he said, I agree a lot with especially the thing where people like to post their issues online and then just talk about it, but then like it's not really solved. It's more of like venting instead of actually like, hey, this is an issue that we really need to fix. So like he said, yeah, we should definitely like get adults to be aware of this issue, because yes, kids, we do have our opinions. We can give our solutions to these things, but the ones who can really implement them is the ones who have power and authorities.
And Alia?
I agree with both Arjun and Jasmine, but if I had to add more, there's also the kind of side of youth who are not exactly aware, or I wouldn't say ignorant, but mostly don't really want to know more about this kind of issues.
I mean, not have access to.
Yeah, and also
knowing
the
about
ones
these
who
issues.
don't have access to. So maybe these ones, they could actually, search up more if like they could get more aware about certain issues that's surrounding, especially, with technologies developing. There's better ways and quicker ways for us to actually get access on these knowledge and, learn more about certain issues and finding the importance in voicing out our opinions when it comes to these kind of issues, because I think what's happening with the youth right now is that most of us, we don't really care enough to, really talk about these issues, and in their mindset, it's most likely because they think it's an adult job, and, adults can handle it. It's adults' things to do, but we have to, really be aware that these issues, surround us, and it affects us, the youth especially, and for this kind of issues to, really be improved, it needs voices from the youths and what the youth actually is going through. That's where the adults can't really come in, So, definitely the youths can, get more aware, and the government, people with authority, can also help by giving access to people that have this lack of, access to these platforms, or, they don't have access to learning about these kind of issues. They are not exactly aware, and it's not their fault. So I think that's where the government can also help by giving, making sure that everyone have the equal access to these platforms and these technologies, and then from then on they can, be aware and voice out their opinions on those certain issues.
And as you said a little bit earlier in the interview, youths will become the next generation, the leaders of the next generation. Youths will eventually be those adults who can shape and inform these policies. Thank you so much, the three of you, for sharing your insights today. I've been speaking to Arjun Jaya Vejayan, Jessie Lee Jessing, as well as Sharifah Nuralyaa, Syed Azhar. This has been It's About Youth with me, Faye Kwan. Thank you for watching, and good night.